शुभं करोति कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदा शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योति नमोस्तुते.
A very good evening to one and all. At the outset, let me wish all of you a very happy, healthy, peaceful and prosperous 2023. On behalf of Center of Resource Development for Educators, I, Mrs. Uma Mahesh, welcome you all to our 18th session of Tuesday webinar. Before we begin with our session, a brief about CRDE. Center of Resource Development for Educators is the initiative of educators Dr. Suresh Nair and Mrs. Deepa Desai ma'am. The president of CRDE, Dr. Suresh Nair, a state teacher awardee, joined Vivek Vidyalaya and Junior College in 2006 after serving for 𝐤𝐿𝐴 College for about 18 years as a professor of physics. Dr. Suresh Nair is an able administrator and a perfect educationist whose visionary endeavor in the field of education paved the way to fetch him an array of accolades. He has guided thousands of students in the subject and is instrumental in popularization of science among the school and college-going students by conducting various Olympiads. He is a co-author in physics textbooks for junior colleges and 𝐬𝐻𝐻TCET for engineering entrance examination. A dynamic professional with more than 32 years of experience in educational services and enriching support systems for effective school and college operations. He has abilities in harmoniously managing tasks of profound best practices to effectively run school. A brief introduction about the Secretary of Central of Resource Development for Educators, Mrs. Deepa Desai. Knowledgeable, insightful, hardworking, determined are just some of the words that describe Mrs. Deepa Desai. She has been in the field of education for the last 37 years and is a recipient of many awards for her work. Former principal of Arya Vidya Mandir, Juhu, the founder principal of Mahapragya Public School, Kalba Devi, a CBSE school in South Mumbai, and former head of IES Manik Vidya Mandir. She is a multi-talented woman, an inspirational educationist, passionate teacher, motivating leader, and a compassionate person. She is of the belief that every child can learn and has the potential, but must be taught the way they understand. Her rich experience as an educationist also made her innovative and knowledgeable trainer for the CBSE and Sri Kelvani Mandal's group of schools in Shirpur, Dhule. CRDE is a platform where teachers and educators are manured to excel and mentor the student community through local and international mentorship. CRDE offers opportunity to experiment and implement ideas, innovations and collaborations to achieve performance and continuous professional excellence. CRDE is where confluence of like-minded individuals share and imbibe knowledge, experience through interaction, deliberation, and international exposure. May I request Deepa Desai ma'am to give us more insight about CRDE. Over to you, Deepa Desai ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for those kind words and the intro of CRDE. As we have stepped into 2023, let me wish all present here a very, very prosperous, healthy, happy, and a year which will bring all your aspirations and dreams to realization. CRD, as ma'am said, is a name that is Center of Resource Development for Educators. Now, I see some new names here, and many of you may not be really acquainted with what CRD is all about. So I'll just run through a few slides which will give you a brief about our organization. I'll just be sharing my screen. CRDE, as Uba ma'am said, is a Center of Resource Development for Educators, and it's a small attempt by Dr. Suresh Nair and myself to realize and explore our learning of more than 3 decades, our dreams, our ideas, and share it with other educators, and in return, learn from them and create an ecosystem where everyone is learning and evolving. With this idea, CRD was launched on 5th of October 2021. That is World Teachers' Day. As you can see in the slide, the name says Center for Individual Resource Development International. Due to certain technical issues with the government, we could not use the word international, and we renamed ourselves as Center of Resource Development for Educators, that is CRD. The membership of our organization is free for all. When I say free for all, I mean all educators, whether working or retired, independent educators, which means teachers, principals, and so on. Now, our idea of creating this organization was to provide you resources. That means it is an organization wherein we empower other educators, and in the bargain, we also do get empowered. It is an organization which works towards promoting the UN SDGs, and build a community with sustainable skills, values, so that it benefits the society at large. These are our trustees. We have an eminent panel of advisory board, and you can see on the names, they are renowned persons. We also have eminent mentors who are across the globe. We have Professor Dr. Ambuja Iyer, who is present amidst us today, Mr. Ramesh Iyer, Mr. 𝐤𝐤𝐿, and Dr. Pramod Mahajan. We also have a group of educators who are our ambassadors, and these are once again across the globe. In keeping with our vision of being a center of possibilities, a number of events were organized both offline and online. Today is a Tuesday webinar, and which we have started this Tuesday webinar right from our inception in the month of October. Our first webinar was on the 26th of October, and we have been having this throughout the year. As you can see that we are just a year old, slightly older than a year, and we will continue to hold these webinars. Now, in these webinars, we had experts who shared with their expertise with our audience, that is the educators, and in the bargain was beneficial to all our stakeholders. These were our eminent speakers. till December, we had 17 Tuesday sessions in place because we have it every fortnight. And in case there is some examination or going on, or if there is some festival like Diwali festival or Christmas, these webinars are not held during that period. Now, in addition to our Tuesday webinar, we have partnered very effectively with national and international organizations. Our very first national conference was held just after our inception, that is on the 18th and 19th of October. It was a two-day conference, and both the days our keynote speakers were eminent personalities renowned throughout India. Our speakers as well were renowned people, and you can see from the slide we have speakers from across India. Not only India, across the globe. And one of our speakers is our eminent speaker for the day today. Our panel again was a pan-India, and Mrs. Kalyani Chaudhary very seamlessly moderated the discussion on the topic, role of principals with global perspective. Now, in addition to our Tuesday webinars, we also have an event which is specially for the teacher. And why I say it's specially, because it is a day for the teachers to showcase their talent. Sometimes it's a hidden talent, sometimes it's a known talent. Showcase it, and it is held once a year. So last year we held it on 16th of November. This year we had it on 8th of November. And we had a plethora of activities. Each participant was awarded a certificate of appreciation. Now, these were our online events. In addition to the online, as I said earlier, we had offline events also for the educators. We had organized educators meet at SM Shetty School, Powai, where our panel consisted of the educational sector and the corporate sector. The discussion was on building aspirations through education, and Dr. Lata Venkat was the moderator for the event. She also is the ambassador for CRDE. Our other event was in association with Amity University, and it was held at Amity Campus, Kurla, wherein again we had eminent speakers for the panel, and the panel discussion was on the role of school leaders in mentoring teachers. The moderation was carried out by Miss Yogita Khanna. For the higher education, that is the degree college students, degree college principals, sorry, we organized a meet and a panel discussion on 23rd of April at Sahara Star, Mumbai. The meet was organized in association with 𝐸𝐥 Services and in collaboration with 𝐕𝐵𝐸k Vidyalaya, that is 𝐕𝐵𝐸k College of Commerce, the degree college. Once again, we had eminent people as a chief guest. Chief guest, Honorable Dr. V.N. Rajashekharan Pillai, and guest of honor, Dr. A.P. Jayaraman. We had international speakers as our guest speakers, and again, eminent panel, wherein Dr. Aditya Save moderated the panel discussion of role of a future of education, social emotional learning, very seamless. We got an overwhelming response over here, but due to space constraints, we could accommodate only 32 college principals. The outcome of this meet was an entrepreneurship development program for college students, degree college students, in association with La Sierra University, California, USA, and 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐥𝐿 services. It's a 6 months online certificate course, which we are offering to the students free of cost. The inauguration of this course was on 2nd of July. We will be having the closing ceremony on 26th of January this year. Another project that we had taken up was in association with Dr. Mark Nowacki. It was based on study of situational intelligence in students post-COVID. It was a pilot project, and 375 students across India from 9 schools participated in this pilot project. CRDE has co-authored a white paper, which is under publication with the European Journal of Psychological Assessment. Music is the most universal way of expression in human life. To discover the impact of musical sound frequencies on the brain and its effect, event was held for the educators on the 22nd of December 2022 at Ravindranath Mandir complex in association with Swardhara. We had a panel discussion on the topic Touching Hearts, SEL to SEIL. Once again, we had Mrs. Kalyani Chaudhary, who moderated the discussion on this particular topic. We had guest speakers, Dr. Neelam Malik and Mr. Prashant Thakre. Dr. Neelam Malik is the CEO and owner of Arya Gurukul group of schools, and Mr. Prashant Thakre, as all of you must be aware, is a renowned musician. The audience, the August gathering, was exposed to an enthralling musical demonstration of how the app is used by the students in school and at home, and even the parents can be a part of this app. And also, not only this, we had a wonderful experience of listening to the renowned musician, to the singer 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐥𝐵. As you can see, the audience is so engrossed in listening and enjoying the session. Many of our events got some press coverage. As leaders, we all have a roadmap to follow, but we also are the ones to track better paths to provide enriching, conducive learning teaching environment to our students and our teachers. And hence, CRDE will strive and continue to strive to fulfill our mission, our vision and become an exemplary center and continue to provide all the necessary resources to our stakeholders, that is the teacher community, the students, and society at large. Thank you all for your support and well-wishes.
Thank you so much, Deepa ma'am, for such a wonderful insight, which within a span of just 14 months, which shows 5th October 2021 till December, because this is just Jan 10th, first for this new year, right? So in
Yes,
17 sessions, when we have CRDE has from the time of inception, when we have come so long, definitely it will continue to the skies, I'm sure.
thank you so much, ma'am.
Let us proceed with the session for today, which is again a very interesting topic, burnout and skill shortage, which is, I'm sure, all the educators would agree with me, this is a dire need for today, which is on student learning, student-centered learning. And we have a very eminent speaker on this, who has already been a speaker for CRDE. Today we have Mr. Gustav Joshi, Faculty, Digital Technology and Mathematics, Brisbane College Education, Catholic Education, Brisbane, Australia. Professionally focused on student-centered learning. He has been a science leader, teacher, assessor, mentor, and teacher coach at Brisbane Catholic Education, Australia. He is a learning development professional who designs, integrates, and evaluates change and assisting organizations and individuals to reach their desired goals, which he does by assisting professionals and organizations to build upon their existing knowledge and scale new frontiers through innovation and adaptation. Mr. Gustav Joshi is a community-centered person who wants to make a difference in people's lives. And he does this by being kind, caring, and sincere. He is passionate about helping others learn. Within 15 years of experience in education and training, peers regard Mr. Gustav Joshi as responsive, friendly, and respectable mentor. He brings expertise in the areas of engineering, training and assessment, research, data analysis, and project management. He also teaches people to develop new skills by guiding and inspiring rather than just giving them instructions. He is highly adaptable to change, good at communication, consulting, facilitating, and training people of all ages. Mr. Gustav Joshi is a person who is balanced, family-oriented, progressive, and thoughtful. He is very effective at developing and maintaining trust amongst his colleagues. This skill transcended into the classroom, where he showed a genuine interest in learners as individuals. Without any further delay, let me call upon Mr. Gustav Joshi to take over. Welcome you, sir.
Good evening, madam. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Uma, madam, for those really kind words. And thank you
You're
for
most welcome. You're most welcome.
For providing me this opportunity to have a chat about my experiences during these times of COVID and what I have seen from both sides as a teacher and a teacher mentor, as well as a colleague to many teachers who are on the verge of burnout. So I'll just start sharing my screen here. And we'll start on the slides. So my topic for the day is teacher burnout and how to tackle the skills shortage. There is no doubt that this is happening. This has been happening for a while. This has now come to a head, really. It's not something new. It is just something which has now come to a head. And what has been happening as I have seen it, I'll just try and showcase with a short story, a bit of a background. My interest in project management and research leads me to defining the problem as I see it, a hypothesis of what might be happening. There's some breakout questions which are related to futuristic thinking, and I was so delighted to see the entrepreneurial program happening and taking place across the member constituents of CRDE, and 32 principals joining in and thinking ahead. And that was just fantastic to know that people are already thinking way ahead of where we need to be. I might offer a few potential solutions, and my context will be within the Australian curriculum rather than a one-size-fits-all, but it might be useful to people in different geographical locations. Might take a few question and answers, key takeaway, and a call to an action. So I'll start off with Dan's story and then my story. I've got two videos here, which I won't play at the moment, but I've got them there in the presentation, which will be shared with you later, if you would want to have a look. So the first story is about Dan, and I chose the name Dan on purpose because Dan is a real person. Dan was my colleague. And I say Dan was my colleague because Dan is not working as a teacher anymore. COVID started and Dan started feeling the pressure. Online classes, engaging students online. How do I know if the students are engaged? How do I know if they're even listening to me? How do I know if they're not watching Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever else? Or at that time, I think it was the go-to thing was TikTok in 2020 back then. And everyone was watching TikTok as the teachers were teaching on one side. And Dan was no exception to this phenomena as well. So Dan was feeling really, really frustrated. Dan bore it out for close to an year and a half. Mid of 2021, Dan decided to start taking things in his own hand. He missed his family. His family are from rural New South Wales. So that's just across the border from where I am at the moment. It's about a 2 hours drive south from where I am at the moment in Brisbane. But his family lives there. So not too far, but not too near either. Dan was worried about his parents and especially his mum, who had some underlying health conditions. And Dan wasn't really feeling well. No guesses for what was actually happening to Dan. Dan was facing a mental health crisis. Lots of teachers faced the same or similar mental health crisis. Lots of teachers are still facing this mental health crisis. There is a disproportionate amount of teachers out, especially in Australia, New Zealand, England, and America at the moment, who are facing a mental health crisis. And one of the hypotheses I have with relation to that is it has a lot to do with Western culture. And we are quite fortunate that in India, we are, and we have always been community oriented. And that sort of dampens the blow, I guess, to an extent. But Dan wasn't so fortunate. Dan left his job at the start of 2022. He's now in a rural town of New South Wales with a population of 700 people, staying next door to his mum and dad. And Dan is a postman. Dan loves what he does. Dan's salary has halved. And Dan is the happiest I have seen in the last several years. I just caught up with him over Christmas. He's been really, really happy. Coming to my story, like a lot of people around the world, did I think of quitting teaching? Yes, I did. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I did think of quitting teaching. Why? So many reasons. But the COVID pandemic actually brought things to a head. So I'm just going to go a bit further in this one and move on to the next slide and try and define what is Dan's problem, what is my problem, and what is problem of probably every teacher around the world at the moment. So I've spoken about observing the mental health issues. The other problem, which a lot of teachers, and not so much in the Asian countries, face, because one of the great strengths of Asia and Southeast Asia in general is adaptability. Again, it's a cultural factor, and it's something we should be proud of, because not a lot of cultures around the world have that same level of adaptability. What it does is makes this second point I have, which you can see on your screen, a bit less intense in the non-Western world. Teachers, early career teachers, mid-career teachers, and even principals at times did not cope for close to 6 months with technology and the rapid deployment of Skype, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. It was a huge overload for them. On top of that, like most of you, juggling family life in COVID, the workload expectations hadn't changed. You were still expected to do the amount of assessments, just in a different setting. There was still a lot of workplace bullying that was happening around Australia and New Zealand. And when I say workplace bullying, I do not mean it as if people were intentionally being bullies. A lot of times, people actually did not realize that the way they spoke or the way they expected work to be done in the new reality was putting unrealistic pressures on their peers, on their seniors, and at times the people who were working or training under them. And that includes students as well. There has been a huge rise in physical attacks on teachers and verbal assaults on teachers all around Australia, all around Australia. It is without exception. To just give you an idea about the verbal assaults, from what I can remember last year teaching, and I teach digital technologies, and I'm going to be continuing that for the next couple of years because I've developed this interest in programming, which I want to take forward with the kids. And so when I say kids, it's usually year 7 to year 12. So what would be classed as school and then junior college back in India. So yeah, I've had about 20 in the last year only. So 20 verbal assaults happening. And as teachers, what we end up doing, because we are teachers, we have a calling to the profession. We do it because we love our jobs and we love influencing the next generation. Is we take it, we sit with it, and we let it be. We put up with a lot, and that doesn't help things too much. Yes, it does, but in the long run, it doesn't help with teacher mental health. And that is one of the many reasons leading to burnout as well. On top of that, we've had government directives. So in Australia, we've had government directives about when we would start teaching, how we would start teaching. Funny thing about Australia is that even though there is an Australian curriculum, there is no central one-size Australian curriculum. So what I mean by that is in Queensland, we contextualize the curriculum to our students. In New South Wales, they contextualize their curriculum to their students and so on. And so everyone does the same level of year 12 exams, but depending on how the state governments contextualize the curriculum, the pressures either increase or decrease on the teachers as well as the students. The problem also at times is parents and caregivers. And I can probably think a lot of you would have faced this problem regardless of COVID. Parents are consumers. Parents are the contributors to our education system, and they are important stakeholders. And of course, they're going to want to have a say in things. And of course, they are going to want to direct how things work. During the time of COVID, and even now, what is happening around Australia is that parents and caregivers are really pushing the boundaries of teacher well-being. And this is becoming a serious issue, which is now being recognized by most education unions around Australia, as well as most governments. In fact, the Australian Catholic University, which is based in Brisbane and also in Ballarat and different parts of the country, has come up with a course on how to be assertive in the times of parent and workplace bullying. So there's actually a 6-month course to help people deal with these things. To contribute to the burnout has also been the teachers, and at times I would say this, even the management's lack of ability to contribute to decision making. You would think the principal would probably be the most powerful person in that school setting to make those decisions. And if you could convince them, you would have a good chance of steering the ship the way you would like it. The complication, as all of you know, is school boards. And school boards are not necessarily composed of teachers. In fact, a lot of times they are proxies with some sort of political affiliation. So they have a different agenda they run to, and they're not necessarily in sync with what happens at the school. As a result of this friction, it leads to excess pressures on the people who are actually in the trenches. That is you and me, the teachers. And they start feeling the pressure even more. I'm sure this is not an exhaustive list that I have put in front of you. I'm sure there's many more things which contribute to teacher burnout. But like I said before, COVID brought things to a head, but this is not something new. I've quoted a paper there about occupational stress in Australia, the United Kingdom, and America from a 2013-14 publication. And just look at the graph there, the teachers K-12, 48% responding as a yes. I also found out research which dates back to 1995, in which they first identified this term known as teacher burnout. So it's definitely not a new problem. It's just that COVID has finally brought it to a head. And what has caused stress and burnout? When I interviewed teachers around the Brisbane area, both formally and informally, what I did find out was workplace conditions, workload, and expectations. Aggression was one of the major contributors to teacher burnout. You can see they have put poor student behavior, including lack of motivation and effort. It's not so much of a problem anymore. Yes, it does contribute to teacher well-being, but it's not a significant contributor as I've observed in the last 2 or 3 years. Ultimately, the choice is that of the student. You can take a horse to water, you can do everything in your power to make it drink, but whether it wants to drink or not is ultimately up to the horse. So teachers around Australia are recognizing that, and that is helping with their stress. I joke about it with my students routinely that you spend more time with us teachers than you do with your own parents. And if you think about it, they spend close to 7 or 8 hours every day with us. They go home, they spend about 1 hour in the morning, maybe with their parents, 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon and evening with their parents, or they're doing some activities outside, playing games, going to some clubs, going to some coaching classes, going somewhere else, doing some stuff, maybe socializing, all those kind of stuff, and then they go to sleep. So the people who see them the most are us, the teachers. We see them a lot more than their parents do. And so we have a good idea about what's going to work with them and what's not going to work with them. And due to that, I think it reduces the stress on teachers because differentiation automatically happens. Differentiation is something we do without thinking. We've always done it without thinking. And in India, especially, we have done it for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries. When the word differentiation wasn't even coined, we were doing it back in our gurukuls, because otherwise you wouldn't have had Sri Krishna and Balram spending, 16 months at Sandipani Rishi's ashram, whereas other students were spending 8 years in that same ashram learning different skills. So differentiation has always been a part of teaching, and I think that helps reduce the stress and doesn't actually contribute towards the burnout. What does contribute towards the burnout is especially aggression from pupils and parents, and the workplace condition. So to give you an idea about that one, I'm sure a lot of you have faced aggression from students and parents, regardless of COVID or not. And it does affect a person significantly. I interviewed close to 80 teachers in the last year itself, when I first started getting the same experiences myself. And as is human nature, we try and validate and we seek out other people to see if they are having similar experiences and understand what they're experiencing. And then as teachers, we are prone to overthinking. So we try and go a step further and we say, oh, okay, so if something is not happening to someone else, then maybe I need to adapt and change my style so that it doesn't happen to me. So that's the first thing any teacher will do. They will overthink, they will try and shift the blame onto themselves for one reason or the other, and then they will try and find a solution. And this is precisely why this issue of burnout is so serious, not from just an individual viewpoint, but from the point of view of society. And I'll come to that in a moment. You can see there's some other stuff I've listed out there with regards to causes of stress and burnout. And I draw your attention to self-esteem and status, as well as false public perceptions about teachers. These two, in my opinion, from whatever pilot projects and research I've done so far, are the biggest contributors to teachers leaving the field. Teachers get knocked down so hard by different stakeholders, and a lot of time by management as well. So when I'm saying management, I'm not speaking about principals. I'm actually speaking about management boards, which oversee the working of the school, because they have set targets, they have marketing targets, they have sales targets. They're looking at it from an economics perspective, and they're right. They should be looking at it from an economic perspective. But the teachers and the principals are looking at their clientele, not just as a data set, but as a person. They know that someone in their class has had a family mishap somewhere. Maybe they've had a grandparent who's sick, they've had an uncle, aunt who's sick, they've had something along those lines. And that is why young so-and-so isn't performing as well. And that leads to a lot of stress for the teachers. When they communicate this higher up, it goes right up to the principals. And sometimes I won't paint the board in the same light as well. Sometimes it goes up to the members of the board, and they're human and they understand as well. And they really do. But they have targets and they have inspections and they are accountable. And pressure is such a thing that the quicker you shift it down the order, the better it is to deal with. So it does get shifted down, and that causes teacher stress and teacher burnout. In the Western world, especially, as you would be aware, because a lot of you have heaps of contacts in the Western world and you communicate so well with teachers in Australia, America, Europe, the United Kingdom, and so on, you would definitely know that the perception is teachers get 12 weeks of school holidays. Teachers teach 9 to 3. And teachers get every weekend off in addition. Now, if I had 1 cent for every time someone has said that around the world, I would be a really rich man by now. We know that's not true. We work a lot more than the mandated 38 hours or 30 hours as per our contract. And we don't do it because our job expects us to. We do it because we want to. We care for the students, and that causes stress. That causes burnout as well. If I talk about this second last point, lack of professional opportunities. In the last 6 months, this is another issue in Australia which has come to a head. Teachers in Australia have been sitting patiently at times years after years, maybe 5 years, 10 years, in some cases even 20 years, waiting for their time to climb up the professional ladder, waiting for their time to become an assistant principal, a deputy principal, a head of a department, a head of a faculty, a teacher mentor. They have been waiting. And when COVID hit, what happened was those opportunities shrunk, and they shrunk quite significantly. Why? Because I go back to that first point of targets, inspections, and marketings. As COVID hit Australia, one of the big things that happened in Australia was a shift from private education to public education. In fact, the level of students attending public schools is the highest in 2022 than it has been in the last, I think, 40 years or 45 years. It's at the highest. To complicate matters, in private schools, they were also doing online teaching, same as public schools, and they were charging fees. So parents decided and caregivers decided, let them go to a public school where we don't end up paying fees instead of paying really, really high fees. And so the private school management structures started having this issue of less students. And we all know less students means less people needed to manage, and it shrunk the professional opportunities. Did it increase it in the public sector? No, not really, because the public sector was already oversubscribed in terms of leadership professions, professional opportunities, and they're still trying to streamline them down and bring them down to a manageable level. So people saw that they had nowhere to aspire to and nowhere to lead to, and that caused them excessive stress and eventually led to burnout. I'm coming back to the same point again and again, because that's the underlying theme, in a sense, of what I have noticed of teachers, being one myself and being guilty of doing that myself, is the best skill we have apart from teaching is overthinking. I challenge any other profession to overthink the same way that teachers do. just to change track for a bit, I've got 3 questions on there, which at some stage I would like you to please, if the opportunity presents itself, to take it up with your colleagues or at your workplaces, or even around your communities. So it could be your society, could be your colonies, anywhere. What would happen if the jobs which we are so used to, like accounting, pharmaceutical, medical diagnosis, scientific testing, which are already starting to get automation in them. Document writing is the next one. I think a lot of you would have heard about 4 days ago, they shut down an AI-based essay writing tool in all US universities because it was so good that the students only had to type in a few ideas and it would give an essay which was professional looking, and teachers and college educators were having trouble deciding if this was plagiarized, if this was their own idea, was this collusion, was this plagiarism, what was it? They did not know, they did not have the tools to find out, so on and so forth. So this does become a really important question when we are looking towards solutions for the burnout. And I'll connect that part a bit later in my session. The other question with regards to burnout, and always please just, I'm just sort of connecting it back to burnout is a side effect of people forgetting that they are humans and not machines. So when things take a toll on our well-being, it leads to burnout. And the third one is, what statistics have you been able to uncover regarding teacher burnout in your city, state, or country? And this question is in multiple layers, really, because what I'm trying to do here is also a call to action for if there is any statistics available with regards to this in different communities, in different cities, in different states. No governance is the same. So different levels of government react to different situations in different fashions. Some react in a methodical fashion, some react with a band-aid approach. Can't really blame them, they have their electoral cycles to run and so on. But these are really important questions we should be raising as educators with an eye on the future. And why an eye on the future? Because we shape the future. If we are burnt out, there is not going to be a really nice future. So here are some of my tips for individuals to avoid the stress which you may be experiencing even now. One of them is, we are really good at this, all teachers, maintaining routines. The second one, which we are not really good at, is setting reasonable expectations on ourselves. We are really, really good at setting reasonable expectations for our classes, and really, really good at, okay, if you can't do this, I will help you. If you can't do this, come see me at my lunch break. Come see me at morning tea time. I'm going to be doing yard duty at this time. I'm going to be here after school. I will run a homework club. And all of that, we're really, really good at that and making sure that others are looked after, but we forget to look after ourselves. That also brings me to the points of establish healthy and sustainable boundaries. This year, I experienced for the first time that I was already taking 3 or 4 co-curricular activities, including debating, computer club, Lego Mindstorms, and so on. And my management asked me to take on another 2 or 3 activities. And I said no. For the very first time in my life, I said no. And it felt horrible. I felt guilty. I felt like I was letting the team down. I felt like I was letting my students down. And this feeling continued for about 3 months or so. And then I started feeling good. I started feeling a lot more positive. I started feeling that I actually had a life beyond school, and it translated into greater well-being. So I would encourage all of us as teachers and managers and board members and all of that, whatever role you're playing in this jigsaw of education, please establish healthy and sustainable boundaries. It is difficult, I know. People need a lot of persuasion to get to that stage. The second thing I stopped doing this year, responding to school emails on the weekend. I had students saying to me on Monday, "Oh, you didn't answer my email I sent you at 9 p.m. on Saturday evening." And I explained to them that no, that is the boundary. On Friday, because we have a weekend, that is the cutoff time. You have anything to say it by 4 o'clock on that Friday. Otherwise, it's not that urgent. We can deal with it on Monday. And it's really important that we model this as educators to prevent stress and burnout, because the moment we model this to our kids, we are already molding and shaping their ideas of what are healthy and sustainable boundaries. And that makes the world a better place to live for our children and their children and their children. So it does go round and come round and makes things really, really positive. Focus on what is in your sphere of influence during times of COVID and even now. I think we've had sessions on, I saw there were sessions on psychology and there were eminent psychologists who have spoken. So I won't delve into that aspect of things, but they would have made you aware that we are facing what is known as a cognitive COVID tail, which means if I have a student at year 11 who's been through the pandemic in the last 3 years, then realistically, I should be expecting their mathematical abilities to either be, in best case scenario, at an year 10, or more realistically, at an year 8. The pandemic has hit hard. It has burnt them out as well. And what that means is it increases the pressure on us to help them to catch up, because 11, 12 are board exams. Everyone needs to do the big things. Everyone needs to get the highest grades possible. Everyone needs to get the highest percentage. Then they all need to go to college. Then they all need to come out in an industrial model. Then they all need to go to work, and then they all need to lead their lives. And we need to repeat this cycle of humanity over and over again. Okay, just hold on to that idea for a moment. All right. Just think about what I've just said there. Lean on your support network and seek help if needed. Now, this is something we are really, really good at doing in Asian countries, not so much in the Western world, because everyone has their own sense of privacy and individualism, something I appreciate and respect, but I don't necessarily think I understand after many, many years here. I just can't understand why you wouldn't talk to a friend, or why you would be conscious about talking about your problems, because the more you share, the more the problems disappear and you get innovative solutions. And that's what we're trying to teach our kids through peer teaching, is that when you discuss a problem and when you discuss it with something else, you come up with an innovative solution. So it really beats me why we don't do that more often. I'm coming to this one about preparing for a changing world. And if you remember my question about accounting and professions disappearing, a curveball in education we have seen around Australia, apart from the shift from private education to public education, is distance education. The young lady who topped the entire state of Queensland for year 12 this year in 2022, so past year, so this academic year which is gone, she did her year 11 and 12 through distance education. She did not attend school as we know it. Brisbane College in Victoria have already, back in December 2020, set up a complete online campus, and their students do all their learning online. They're given real world assignments, and they go out into the community and they do their assignments in the community, and they come back. And for some people, that model works really well. In my education system, so there's different education systems within Australia. There's the public, there's the private, there's the Catholic, there's the non-governmental independent education system, and so on. In the Catholic education system, I've noticed an increase in this trend. And the reason why it becomes important from a teacher and a management perspective is it means less enrollments, but it also means more opportunity. 4 of my colleagues in the last 1 month have taken it upon themselves to start offering online courses and negotiated with the management to recognize their teaching experience. And it's going on slowly, but it's happening surely, that this is the new reality of the world. And this is causing traditional teachers like you and me a bit of stress and leading to burnout as well. So teachers are leaving in droves. That is the reality. Where do they go? These are the top professions where teachers have been going in the last 1.5 years in Australia. Our transferable skills make us great HR managers. They make us great training and development professionals. They make us great coaches. They make us great police officers, believe it or not. They make us great legal people, because how many of us, and I can raise my hand for this maybe 1,000 times if I'm asked this question again and again over, is how many of us have read a beautiful essay or a beautiful report by a student or a beautiful mathematical model presented by a student, only to go across the line and say, you should have had a capital I there, and your vowel here is wrong, and this isn't grammatically correct. We nitpick. That is our nature. That is our job. That is what we do. That is what we expected to do. But that transfers on as excellent skills for legal and paralegal type of roles. A lot of teachers in Australia have given up on teaching entirely and started their own cafes. They've started their own rural farming, and they've started their own courier businesses. A lot of them have done that. I know at least 10 people who have done that across Australia when I'm looking at my contacts, and I've got a very limited amount of contacts when we look at all of the people across Australia. A few teachers have gone overseas. A few teachers who are late in their careers. So we're talking someone who's close to retirement, but they still may have 4 or 5 years left to retirement, taking temporary mental health breaks and doing supply teaching instead. So they don't come in as regulars, but they put their names down as supply teachers. I'll be available Monday, Thursday, and Friday every week. And the other times I'm not marking, I'm not doing anything, I'm just taking a break. Proofreading, again, is something a lot of teachers have gone into, and medical transcription. Surprising when I interviewed a lot of teachers who had left the profession was they went to manual labor and being factory workers. And this was really, really surprising. And I asked a couple of them why they left the profession and why they're doing something like factory work, which doesn't necessarily require the use of their intelligence, but more requires the use of their skills to follow instructions. And what they said, well, it didn't really surprise me because I had an inkling, but what they said was that we're tired of thinking. We're burnt out, we're spent. I don't want to think about what I'm doing. I want to come in, I want to do my job, I want to get paid for it, and I want to leave. And I'm giving that example to everyone around because that's something I have seen, and that's something that worries me for the future of our students and their students and their students. A lot of teachers, myself included, at one point, a taxi driver's license was really, really on top of my list. Why? Because get a job, drive around, relax. When you don't want to work, you don't work, and you still make the same amount of money. In fact, train drivers in Australia make a lot more than teachers, and so do bus drivers. And so a few adventurous people have actually shifted to that as a profession. But this is what they are doing due to stress and burnout. Now, there's enough of me speaking about all of that has gone wrong and all of the burnout that's happening. You have seen it in your own ways within your communities. You've probably lost a colleague in the teaching workforce to one of these jobs. You've probably seen them getting excited, anxious, angry at times, slamming doors, slamming desks, going out, never to come back again through those doors, vowing to never take up teaching. But it's not all doom and gloom, really. There's a lot of young people as well as career changers who are eager to get into the teaching workforce. Now, that is a double-edged sword. It's really, really good that they are willing and able to come in. But if we do not have any actionable solutions, we're going to end up with the same situation that we have right now of stress and burnout. So upon interviewing close to 600 participants around Australia, this is what I've sort of heard and tried to put it in some sort of a coherent sequence is principals around Australia are expected to lose 25% of their current workforce this year, either to another school, either to university, or one of those or any other profession along the way. Principals and boards in Australia have been told to expect their workforce to call in sick more frequently. And both of these require a solution of having an oversized talent pool ready. So for those of us who have got friends, partners, family members working in the IT industry, this is not a new concept. They have people on the benches all the time who are reserves, who are ready to come in at the drop of a hat, and they can take them as the projects expand or as the projects contract and so on. So that type of information technology, human resource thinking is something which is an actionable solution here in Australia. The next thing is focusing on student well-being by focusing on teacher well-being. So that's a quote I've put in there, which a lot of you have probably heard over and over the years, is it's not what you did for people, it's how you made them feel, which people remember. I caught up with a student of mine from Adelaide when Suresh Sir and 𝐤𝐿𝐥𝐵 visited me back in Adelaide. And I won't name the student, but this was the naughtiest boy you could ever think of. Naughty to an extent that he went to the zoo, he sat on an anthill deliberately, and when all the ants bit him, he was having a huge amount of fun telling everyone that story, and then bunking school for the next week or so just to recover from that. So really naughty boy, but a really kind boy. And Sureshji and 𝐤𝐿𝐥𝐵 would probably remember at that time as well that this person was one who really cared about how people spoke to him. And so we actioned at that time for teachers to speak to him in an even more caring fashion than we normally do. And when I caught up with him, guess what he remembered? He remembered that, and I can share it with you, Sureshji, that he remembered you, and he remembered 𝐤𝐿𝐥𝐵, and he remembered Dr. Guha and 𝐤𝐿𝐥𝐵's performance at the school, because that made him feel valued and that made him feel expressed. So it's about how people feel, which is going to tackle that teacher burnout and teacher shortage. The way it'll probably work is if we can collectively focus on teacher well-being, then we will not lose out the number of teachers that we are losing at the moment. Principals in Australia have been told to expect lower academic results and prepare parents and teachers for this. And I've put parents and teachers in that successive order on purpose, because there are times when you can convince the parents and you can really do it. Parents are understanding. They understand the reality of the situation. The hard part is to convince the teachers, to convince an year 12 teacher that their results might be on a B instead of being an A, points again to that cycle of overthinking. What am I doing wrong? What could I do more for the student? Maybe if I didn't sleep as much and I had a few more questions ready, then I could give them to the students. I could maybe have 10 more tests and then they would perform well. And that leads to stress and burnout. So it's really important to get that message across to teachers. And there's extensive research to show the cognitive decline, which I've spoken about previously. This is more for private schools and private institutions rather than public institution, is to expect a short-term drop in enrollments. And principals around Australia have been told that. And so the actionable solution to keep those enrollments up and in that way reduce the stress and burnout for teachers is to have innovative projects. So I was really delighted to see CRDE promoting the entrepreneurial thinking certification from the US to schools. That is the kind of work that needs to be done in this space, because gone are the days of where we would expect students to do the year 12, do their graduation, go out, get a job, and live happily ever after, and then repeat the cycle. So remember when I told you to hang on to that thought? We know as teachers that that world has changed. It is the entrepreneurial thinking which is going to be the future, and we are preparing our students for that, but we need to do it through schools for our well-being as well. It has an effect on our well-being. So I guess what I'm pointing out today is innovative projects slash out the industrial model of education, and therefore they protect teacher well-being, reduce teacher stress, and reduce burnout. Now, this point in the middle, I'm not sure how the audience are going to take this up, and I'm not painting everything in the same brush, but this is just from what I've heard from teachers around Australia. So it might be different in different countries, but this is around Australia. Australian teachers hate meetings. They say, if you can keep it to an email, put it in an email, send it to us, we will read it, we will action it, but I do not want someone telling me what to do and then putting it in an email again and telling me again what to do, because that just increases my stress as a teacher. That is what Australian teachers and New Zealand teachers, and to an extent the British teachers, are saying as well. They do not want as many meetings. They want the meetings to cut down. And then they say that would probably be a factor which would reduce their stress and burnout and help them stay in the profession longer. This one is more of a management one. The next one is refining the school action plan. And it's about team building exercises. So within Catholic education here in Australia, we've got a day every term for team building and working together on a non-academic problem. So in the Catholic setting, it could be working on an understanding of, and this is not a surprise really for those of you who have exposure to the Catholic system, is building our understanding of God or higher entities or things like that. And that does help. My school in particular has taken this action plan further, and we have a meditation and yoga session every Friday morning, and it's run for free. And you just go in there, non-judgmental atmosphere, it is helping boost teacher morale, and it is helping reduce teacher burnout. As a school leader, and this is what I've heard from middle school leaders speaking to senior school or speaking about senior school leaders, is the middle school leaders, so head of faculties, head of departments, expect the principals, the deputy principals, and the board to know that their role has now evolved into an HR manager and a personnel manager. So all those issues of workplace bullying, etc., as well as issues leading to performance, issues leading to professional growth, now need to be tackled by the board and the principals as well as deputy principals. And it was happening already, but now there is a formal expectation within Australia that that should happen more significantly, and that will possibly lead to less burnout and less teachers leaving the profession. This one might come as a bit of a surprise, but it's been tested by 10 of my peers, including myself, with parents. They're saying, use corporate language with parents. Parents work in corporate worlds. Use the language they understand. And it's consistent with our concept of differentiation. So when a student doesn't understand a problem in maths, so I recently discovered when I was trying to teach my child division, that division for a 5-year-old is a really hard topic. And so I went around to the market, I bought counters, and then I grouped them, and then I showed him how to divide things and so on. And he got a bit of it. I don't think he's got all of it, and so on and so forth. But it was the language which he understood. And the same goes with parents. If we use the corporate language, we reduce the risk of friction between parents and schools, and that reduces stress, and that reduces the risk of burnout. I spoke about governments first and different levels of government. So one of the most hilarious things I've heard in a long time is the New South Wales government quite recently introduced, and I call it a band-aid solution because that's what it is, really is. Teachers have a lot of administrative tasks. So what we're going to do is give them more time to do all the paperwork, and we're going to give them all the lesson plans, and this is how they teach, and this is what they do, and this is what they do at the 10th minute in the lesson, and this is what they do at the 12th minute in the lesson, and this is how they end the lesson, and in the 50th minute, they take the attendance. Pin drop silence when this was announced in a press meeting in New South Wales. Everyone was shocked. I bet you're shocked at this point as well to hear what governments can think of, all right? But governments being governments, they will always try and find an easy solution rather than go to the root of the cause. And by no means do I blame them. They have an electoral cycle to live up to, so their interests are aligned differently to our interests. One of the big things that has come out of my chats with people who have left the profession and who are thinking of leaving the profession is they want leaders to advocate for the team and back them up. So not having support from management has also been a crucial part in teachers leaving the profession in Australia. And so if management in Australia does that better, then we're going to have less people leaving the profession. Encourage teacher retraining into other subject areas. And I'm a prime example of this. About an year and a half ago, I knew what programming was. I had done all the mandatory C and C+ and whatever else it was that we did back in India. What was it? COBOL and Basic and Visual Basic and all of that. And did I love programming? No, not a chance in the world that I loved programming. Did I have to teach it? Yes. And when I had to teach it, I had to learn it. Did I enjoy it for 6 months? No. I hated every minute of my professional life. Why do I need to do programming? Why do I need to do this, that? So I got help and I got retrained into that subject area. And that really helped me as a digital technologies teacher, so much so that I do not want to leave this field now. And I'm already introducing Python programming into my curriculum. So in other words, the story I'm giving you is about a purpose, a changed purpose helps prevent burnout and stress. One of the big things which as teachers, you and I have been at the front line of the emergency workers in the pandemic. I know the doctors get the accolades and the essential services workers get the accolades, and we are sort of pushed back into the corner. You teachers, yeah. You did the thing, but you did it online. Yes, we did it online, but we did it so you could go to work or you could do it properly. And that has largely been ignored. The work-life balance, flexible working options are something teachers in Australia are seeking more and more. And the institutions which are offering them these options are seeing a higher retention of teachers and a lower level of burnout. So that's just one of the many things we have observed. Sort of to bring it to a head is, these are some ideas, key takeaways for the future is virtual communication is the future. Like you and me are speaking and having a chat and discussing ideas and brainstorming from miles and miles away. Some of us are on our phones, some of us are on our tablets, some of us are on our desktop. We're doing this virtually. How good is this? This is the future. I would expect there to be a future, hopefully, where I could be present in 3D and you all could be present in 3D as holograms, and we could be interacting with each other, and that'll make it more interesting. So that is definitely the future. The workforce and the workplace is changing, and an acceptance of that will lead to less stress. Leaders need to engage in futuristic thinking. Gone are the days of the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan. It needs to be a 50-year plan. If it's not a 50-year plan, then you're not thinking far enough, is the message leaders are getting in Australia. The message given by the younger generations, so late Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z, and the millennials, and so on, is if it doesn't inspire you, you should be somewhere else. And that's also causing a lot of teachers to leave the profession. So as teaching leaders and as mentors, it is our role to find something which will inspire them, which will keep them hooked, which will keep them within the profession. And all we can do is give it our best shot and try. Here's some tips for businesses. So this is specifically targeted towards board members and those in sales and marketing and enrollments and alumni relations and so on and so forth. Take the risks to lead in product innovation. So those innovative programs you're doing, great job. Do more of them. That's going to get you your enrollments, and that's going to trickle down as less stress for all of your co-workers and colleagues. Listen to the customers and learn what they need. So your customers are not your parents. Your customers are actually your students. In fact, your teachers are also your internal customers. So there's external customers, but there's also internal customers. Listen to them, see what they need and cater to it, and test with your customers until you get the product right. So this is about having that action plan, about having that school plan, about having that educational plan, and refining it, being open to change. The underlying theme is being open to change. What prevents stress? What prevents burnout? Being open to change. What prevents stress? What prevents burnout? Adaptability. Being ready to change. Being ready to listen. Being willing to understand, and being willing to help. That is something which is being spoken in circles around Australia quite extensively now. This is something I like to think about a lot, is that just as the way our grandchildren will need trees for oxygen, so will they need good teachers to become good humans. And for those who are history buffs like me, I love Indian history, and I always try and find examples from Indian history. Let us not forget that Chanakya was the one who shaped Chandragupta Maurya into the emperor that he was. He was the one who started the system of passports, octroi, networks, information gathering. And he did this not by chance, but by deliberately challenging the authority, who was, I think, King Dhyanananda at that time, that he would be mentoring and creating a new generation, a new person who would overthrow the old authority and usher in a new age. As we know, teaching is a profession and not a vocation. So I would definitely encourage all of us to please advocate for it. The change will happen slowly, but it will happen surely. If we do not want to see more colleagues lose out and burn out, we need to advocate for it. We need to make that change. A final parting message from me to everyone, regardless of if you've been teaching even before I was born, or if you're new to the profession, is you are special because you choose to teach. You choose to teach, you choose to influence the next generation, and we collectively need to take the efforts, educate society so that we are not burnt out, we are not stressed, and we can do the job properly to shape, mold, encourage, direct, and make the next generation successful. You're welcome to send them over to Deepa ma'am or Girish sir or Suresh sir as well. They have my email. I will happily respond to those questions as quickly as I can, hopefully within the next week or so. I hope it was useful what I've noticed and what research I have done a little bit of a pilot project around Australia on the causes of burnout and stress and how to tackle stuff. Like I said, a shirt bought here in Australia is not going to fit me properly because I'm of Indian origin. So I will have to tidy it up around the edges. And so is the same with the message that I'm seeing here in Australia, is that'll have to be contextualized and tidied up to suit your context. So thank you once again for the opportunity for allowing me to share my thoughts and my observations. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gustav Joshi, for the wonderful talk, beginning with Dan's story and your experiences, sharing your experiences which are valuable. And every teacher, every educator, they go through this, and starting with the causes of burnout and also the solution and the tips, important, very important tips being given. And I would not forget the last one, that you are special. Educators are very special. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Deepa ma'am, Suresh sir,
Yeah, thank
if
you.
would like
Thank you, Gustav ji. Thank you, Gustav ji. After a
Thank you,
long
Gustav. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thank you.
And for the information of the teachers, Mr. Joshi has shared his presentation with us. And if anybody wishes to have that, we will very happily share it.
So on behalf of CRDE, I sincerely thank from the bottom of the heart Mr. Gustav Joshi for taking precious time and sharing his valuable experiences, which I'm sure all the educators would agree and also try to implement whatever we can in future. And I sincerely thank Dr. Suresh Nair and Deepa Desai ma'am for having given me this opportunity to host. And I sincerely thank all the audience who have been here patiently from 5 till now, whatever, 1.5 hours. And I'm sure we have all benefited from this wonderful session. And I sincerely thank the technical team, Dr. Sangeeta ma'am, for having been a support always. Thank you so much.